What if the balance of power in Britain wasn't where we thought it was? What if, behind the public smiles and polite words, something far deeper was shifting inside the corridors of Buckingham Palace and Downing Street? Tonight, the world is watching, because King Charles has done something no monarch in modern history has dared to do. He has stepped across an invisible line, overruling the Prime Minister himself on a decision that could change the future of the Commonwealth. The whispers began quietly. A leaked document here, a sudden change of schedule there. It started as speculation, the kind of thing political journalists love to chase but rarely confirm. Yet, by the end of last week, it was undeniable. The king had privately expressed his deep concern over Prime Minister Keir Starmer's proposed shift in Britain's relationship with several Commonwealth nations. And that concern wasn't just polite disagreement. Insiders claim that the monarch personally intervened, delaying, questioning, and ultimately overriding Starmer's final position. No one in the palace or Downing Street wants to admit it. But sources close to both say tensions have reached breaking point. For decades, the British monarch has acted as a constitutional figurehead, symbol, not power. But what happens when that symbol suddenly decides to act? What happens when the crown begins to move again? When King Charles ascended the throne, many saw him as a thoughtful, almost academic monarch, more interested in climate change, architecture, and spiritual harmony than raw politics. Starmer, on the other hand, came into office as a lawyer-turned-reformer, pragmatic, methodical, determined to rebuild Britain's standing after years of turmoil. At first, the relationship seemed functional. But now, that calm exterior has shattered, according to insiders. The flashpoint came over a proposal that would have seen Britain reduce its formal role in the administration and support structure of several smaller Commonwealth realms, countries like Belize, St. Lucia, and Grenada, as part of a wider modernization plan. The aim, Starmer's team said, was to decolonize the Commonwealth and make it more democratic, but for King Charles, who has spent decades nurturing those same relationships, the plan was not just misguided, it was dangerous. He saw it as a step towards the quiet dismantling of the very institution he inherited. A source close to the palace reportedly said, "The king believes the Commonwealth is more than a political club. It's a family, and you don't turn your back on family." That single phrase, "you don't turn your back on family," is now echoing through Whitehall. Because if true, it marks the clearest sign yet that the king is willing to defend his vision of Britain's global role, even against his own government. At first, Starmer's team tried to downplay the disagreement. Officially, they said the policy review was ongoing and that the king, as head of the Commonwealth, was being kept informed. But what began as being informed soon became being involved. Palace officials reportedly requested draft copies of the proposal. Private calls were made. Letters exchanged, and then came the moment no one expected. Just days before the plan was due to be finalized, the king is said to have convened an emergency consultation with senior Commonwealth leaders, without Downing Street's direct approval. It was an extraordinary move. According to diplomatic sources, the king urged member states to voice their opinions directly to the British government before any changes were made. Within hours, several Commonwealth capitals sent official letters of concern to London. The result? Starmer's policy was forced back into review. One senior civil servant described the scene inside Downing Street as astonishment. They said, it was like the floor had dropped out. Everyone realized, the king had outmaneuvered the Prime Minister. The palace, of course, denies any breach of constitutional protocol. But the optics are clear. A monarch, not known for confrontation, has quietly drawn a line in the sand. And the world has noticed, across the Commonwealth, reactions have been mixed. In Canada and Australia, commentators are calling it the reawakening of royal influence. In the Caribbean, leaders are divided. Some see Charles's intervention as reassurance that London still cares. Others view it as the old empire refusing to let go. For Britain itself, the moment is electric. After years of political fatigue and cynicism, the idea of a king taking charge, even briefly, has captured public imagination. Opinion polls suggest that support for the monarchy, which had been slipping, has suddenly ticked upwards. The image of Charles as a quiet environmentalist has given way to something else, a leader who, when pushed, acts. But for Starmer, this is nothing short of a constitutional headache. His government now faces the difficult task of asserting authority without provoking a crisis. One former advisor to the Labour leader told the press, he can't be seen to back down. But he also can't be seen to pick a fight with the king. Either way, he risks looking weak. Inside Parliament, whispers have already begun. Tory MPs are seizing the moment, portraying Starmer as the man who lost control not only of his party but of the crown itself. Conservative backbencher Andrew Bridgen commented, "It's a reminder that Britain still has an identity beyond bureaucracy, and maybe the king understands that better than the Prime Minister does." Even within Labour, the episode is stirring unease. Some MPs privately say they warned Starmer that his Commonwealth strategy would provoke backlash. Others fear the government's credibility abroad has been damaged, yet, there's another layer, one far more subtle and perhaps more dangerous. Because what King Charles has done, intentionally or not, is reopen a centuries-old debate: where does royal influence end and democratic authority begin? For generations, that boundary has held firm. Monarchs advise, warn, and encourage, but they do not interfere. Every British schoolchild learns that in the unwritten rules of the Constitution, the Crown reigns but does not rule. And yet, here we are, watching the reign of Charles III challenge that very assumption. The irony is striking. Charles, who once faced criticism for meddling in government affairs as Prince of Wales, sending his infamous Black Spider memos to ministers, had promised to step back upon becoming king. "I'm not that stupid," he famously told the BBC. "You operate within the constitutional parameters." But those parameters now look less solid than before. Because even if the king didn't directly order anyone, his influence, his mere presence, has shifted outcomes. The question is, was it deliberate? Or was it a monarch acting from duty, unaware of how far his shadow now reaches? To understand this, we need to look deeper into Charles's mindset. For decades, he has spoken passionately about the Commonwealth as a living bridge between cultures, a global family built not on conquest but on cooperation. In his eyes, the institution is one of the few remaining threads that ties Britain's history to its future. When Starmer's reform plan landed on his desk, it reportedly included measures that would allow certain Commonwealth realms to move towards republic status more easily, and to phase out British funding for Commonwealth youth and cultural programs. For the king, this wasn't modernization, it was abandonment, and so, behind closed doors, he began to push back. Courtiers say the king's conversations were measured but firm. He did not shout. He did not threaten. But his message was clear: the Commonwealth deserves protection, not retreat. It said that one particular exchange between Charles and Starmer became tense. A palace source describes the king's tone as gravely disappointed. Starmer, for his part, is reported to have reminded His Majesty that foreign policy rests with the government, not the crown. The king replied, "Foreign policy concerns nations. The Commonwealth concerns people. They are not the same thing." That single sentence has become the defining line of the conflict, quoted in diplomatic cables and newsrooms from London to Canberra. Whether apocryphal or not, it captures the essence of this clash, one between the machinery of politics and the moral weight of history. As the story spread, public reaction grew louder. Newspapers ran dramatic headlines. "The king steps in. Charles draws line over empire legacy." Some called it heroic, others, reckless. Social media exploded with debate: was this a monarch defending his duty, or a man crossing into forbidden territory? By the time the weekend papers hit, one thing was clear: Starmer's team had lost control of the narrative. Downing Street scrambled to issue statements affirming their full respect for the monarchy, while stressing that policy remains the prerogative of the elected government. But the damage was done. The image of King Charles overriding the Prime Minister had already burned into the public imagination, and the empire, or what remains of it, was watching closely. Leaders from across Africa and the Caribbean reportedly reached out privately to the palace, expressing gratitude for the king's commitment to partnership. In some cases, even Republican-leaning nations softened their rhetoric suddenly. Charles wasn't just Britain's king, he was once again the face of a global network that many thought was fading. But what if that was exactly his intention? Because behind the constitutional drama lies something far larger: the quiet re-emergence of Britain's soft power, led not by politicians but by the monarchy itself. As one former diplomat put it, Starmer sees the Commonwealth as an outdated club. The king sees it as Britain's soul.